So I set up the template, and the template is going to be of type story, and it'll be of type CellComponent. We'll import story again. And then it's going to be, args are going to be of type CellComponent. And then here, we do our component type CellComponent. And our props are of type args. Then here we can do our template.bind. And here we can do our as error.args equals. And on this, we can do has error true and here we called it background color. And we can do red for now, just to see this work. And then when we go to our story, so inside of here, we got background color red. If I do purple, that is awesome. If I wipe it out, then it defaults to what it was before. I'm looking at the controls from Storybook. And within here, there's a way to tell it the control type. So we could make it a color picker. Choosing the control type. Let's see what happens if I do this. So in our story, we'll just add in these matchers. Save that. And then when we come back to our storybook, and I should have picked that up. We'll just go with the flat arg types, right? And this, I know I need to. Oh no, you're saying I'm missing the arg types, aren't you? So if I do arg types here, that's what you're saying. You guys are probably raging because here I am trying to figure this out. We'll just go the hard-coded route. Let's take out arg types. We'll go background color. And I believe we can just go type. Is it color? Let's just make sure. Oh, it's control type color. So, and thank goodness for Prettier cleaning up after me. So, awesome. That is amazing. That is really cool. So now we can play around with the background color and find one we like as we experiment more. Here now we've got type number. Things are going well. Let's commit this. We're binding the background error color to color picker in Storybook. Like things like this are what amaze me about Storybook, right? If you take the time to build something like this in Storybook, and then you take this back to your product team or whoever's reviewing your designs, and you show them something like this, now they've got the power to come in and go, I don't really like the red that you chose. Let's make it yellow. And you've given them so much more power. And Storybook just enables these awesome workflows. Let's get back to styling this cell, right? When we're in an error state, what would be nice is if we had a little bit of padding around the input itself. And if the border of the input turned red, and even the number inside the input turned red. And one thing that I was going to talk about is potentially doing a little bit of state management here. And I'm not sure if we'll go full-blown NGRX, or if we'll do a component store, or if we'll explore something like ELF, or something like that. But having the ability to control the value will give us some more power here in our storybook, right? Because now we can say, just by default, our ARGs, we can say our value is a 1. And by doing that in Storybook, now when we look at these cells, one of the things that would be nice to do is give people the ability to see a value when they're in there. Let's just see if I'm using some sort of reserved word. What I really wanted to move on to was just styling the input. So let's style the input. And the first thing that would be nice to do is here we just want a little bit of padding around the input. We'll start out with maybe like 1 rem and see what that does for us. Something broken here, maybe. Just run this to make sure that everything's updated. Like I said, I'm gonna be stumbling through this, and so there might be some frustration. The main point of this stream is just kind of to show the design process that I like to follow, just kind of how I think through things. I want to learn, and I also want to learn from the people who come and join, because I know that there are a lot of people out in the community that are brilliant when it comes to Angular and web dev and things like that. And so that's interesting. Let's inspect this. So if I look at, oh, so the cell does have padding, but we're adding the background to the div. It's a lot of fun to code and talk at the same time, but you know, there's a reason. There's a reason why it's a little bit scary for people, and it you know, as you're talking and trying to come up with things to say. Oh, are you serious? Dude, I follow you on Twitter. I'm honored to have you here. It amazes me to have an Angular GDE. I appreciate it so much. And yeah, you're a big inspiration to me in the community, and I love the stuff that you post. That explains the amazing comment. I appreciate it so much, and the feedback. This is where we're going to add our padding. And 1 rem was a little bit too big, so we're going to go with a 0.5 rem around this. And there we go. That's kind of what I'm looking for. We're gonna square this off as we go along. I'm a little confused about the value, why it's not showing up. I've had the opportunity through Angular to meet these amazing people, and I appreciate you guys showing up to my stream. But let's get back to things. I'll stop gushing and fanboying. But let's look at this component. So we want to style this component so that when it's not focused or when it is focused and we're in an error status, let's have a little bit of red around the outside of the input. The other thing is let's make the input a little bit rounded, just in general, to make things a little bit nicer. Not using a library was a suggestion from Citadel to force me to relearn my CSS, and I actually really appreciate it because, man, I'm doing a lot of Googling right now just to figure out how do I style an input border. I can just change the border property. Well, that's super easy. Why didn't I even try that? I should try that before jumping to Google first, right? So we can do a border radius of, we'll try 0.5 rem. And if we have an error, we're just going to do a border color of error color. And we're going to also give it a style color of error color. Now that border radius is a little bit harsh. Yeah, way too harsh. So we're gonna tone that down. If I inspect this, my error here, but that color is being overridden. If I just do a color here, yeah. So obviously I did something wrong with my styling. And the issue is the error is applied to the div and not to the input. So that's an easy fix. And we'll make sure it's a direct child of the border or of the error. So if we apply an error to it, there we go. We need to fix the padding. So first thing we want to do is let's tone down this border radius. And let's add a padding of, we'll do a 0.2 rem padding on this input. And you know what? It's probably easier if I just do this through the tools. Yeah, that looks a lot better. When we're focused, we're getting this the inner border. And I'd like to remove that and use our tools to make sure that we've got our focus visible. Oh, let's go inside of, let's get the input. Let's try that. So we got focus within, and focus visible. So it's focus visible that we need to, and focus visible is setting an offset on our outline. And it's also adding an outline inside of it. Let's change that. In our code, when we're in input and error status, we're also going to set our outline to be, do I need to set the outline color? To be var error color. So now when we go back to our storybook and we focus, let's refresh this so that I undo all the, we're still getting a nice focus effect to where we can tell that we're focusing on the field, but now our focus now shows that we're in an error state. Whereas if we turn off the error state, our focus state stays normal, which is kind of nice. This is one of the things that I highly suggest to everybody. It's just make sure you're committing often. It makes development so much nicer when you're committing often. Committing, styling of the error state. And now, because we can, and because of the great suggestion, let's rename this to be error background color. And this will rename to be error background color. And the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to duplicate all of this. And we're going to just do an error color. And I'm just using the Control D to duplicate so that I can just quickly remove all of this stuff. And we're going to set the error color to be the background, and we're going to set this one equal to red by default. All of this stuff currently is just for Storybook. I don't expect anybody to be setting this. I expect these values to be undefined, and so that's probably what we should leave them. We should leave them as undefined so they stay undefined. And it'll give us the ability to change them in Storybook, but we won't have to, oh, what did I do? Oh, no, that's right. So that's error color, and we set the error color. Because now our background is wrong. So let's go make sure that I'm using the right CSS variable. It is error color, and we've got error background. Error color, error color. Our background color is error color. Our color is color. I don't need this color here because I'm setting it above. So the CSS cascade should take it. My CellComponent, my input is error color. I agree, Citadel. This no library challenge is really going to get me to stretch and just come out of my comfort zone. Because, you know, if I just threw Tailwind or material at this, we'd we wouldn't be styling this. But I also think it's useful just to show people kind of the process of going through and how, how do we get these styles to look like this? Um, let's just try refreshing and see if no. Oh, interesting. Error background color is set to red. Oh, I know what my problem is. I didn't update the story. Error background color. That one is set. And let's also just duplicate this line. And we'll set error color to also be control of type color. And we'll set this to be RGB 255 0 0. I think we started at 0.5. And we'll also set error color to just be red. The other thing I should do is just here in the CSS, I'll leave it as an RGB. But that should, there we go. And now, yeah, now we can style our cell color, and we can do something crazy and style our error text. Oh, that's interesting. I did need the color. So this color doesn't belong here, it belongs in here. And that is incredibly hard to see. Okay, so this is kind of our cell right now. Eventually, what I would like to do is have other states for the cells. And in a lot of the Sudoku games that you can play on like your phone, there's this pencil mode where you can quickly click on cells and quickly fill the same number into cells. And you can also add pencil marks. And that's something that I'd like to add down the road, is the ability to do pencil marks. But for now, I'd just like to get a grid together. And did it pick up my value finally? Or did I do that? I did that. But for now, what I would like to do is move on from the cells and actually generate a grid. I want to use CSS Grid, but I'm really liking this Storybook workflow. Have you guys worked much through a Storybook workflow in the past? So again, we're going to drop into NX because NX is awesome. But let's go ahead and we're going to generate another scam component. This component is going to be our grid. We're going to put this in our components project. And we're going to use SCSS again. Change detection, definitely on push. I think we're going to need on push for all of these, just to make sure that we're maintaining good performance. Definitely going to want our host to be a display block. Yeah, we can export this. If we don't want it, we'll take it out and inline it. I think I need to go in and fix that out, fix the prefix. I don't think I set that when I set up the project. Skip selector, skip tests. Yep, good. We've now generated our grid. And we can close our cell components for now. One thing that we definitely haven't done and that we should do is make sure that we come back and unit test our cells. It does. I'm really liking this workflow. And I'm actually going to be taking this back to work and just kind of showing them the benefits of what we can do. I particularly like just making sure that we bind this so that people can play with the colors. There's so many conversations over, is that the right color, that could be solved by just giving the product people that tool. To add a grid stories, and it should be a grid.component.stories.ts. Let's make sure to rename this one. And in our grid component, we're just going to copy this over. And title for this one is going to be grid. Our component is going to be our grid component. We won't have any arg types yet. And pull that out. And now we should have a new storybook story for our grid. So we come in here and we refresh. Now we've got our grid and our primary story showing us that our grid works. Awesome. So we've added grid component. And now we're going to look at our grid. What I want to do is inside of our grid, we've got our host component. And currently it's display block. Well, let's go display grid. I don't know if you guys have ever played with this tool, but I love it. We're going to remove all of these columns. And we're just going to do an implicit grid. And we're going to add 9 columns. 8, 9. We're going to tell it that we are going to have, we could tell it we have 9 rows. We don't really need to. And we're going to tell it that when we add our cells, we're going to add them across this way. My idea is, and this may be entirely a bad idea. So we've got our grid, and actually, that wasn't even, I believe, can't we just do a repeat 1 FR comma 9? Does not work. And for our gap, I'm just going to use 0.1. Nah, 0.1 is probably too small. We'll do a 0.2 rem to start out with. Double O negative, why Angular? That's a great question. I use Angular quite a bit in my day job. That's a big part of the reason. It's something that I know and that I know pretty well. I don't want the framework getting in the way too much, but I do spend a lot of time in the Angular community. And if you look at my Twitter, you can see that I work a lot in Angular. Um, so, um, so we've got our grid set up with our columns. And so the next thing we're going to do is inside of here, in our input for grid, my thought is that we will have, and maybe it's the best way to illustrate this, is to go back to this grid designer. And we'll remove the implicit ones. And we'll add a few of these, and what did I add? I added 5. So we'll add 5 and 5. So my thought is that the board itself will be, you know, it's essentially a two-dimensional array. And so my thought is that when we work through the grid, you know, this will be 0, 0, 0, 1s. So we'll use basically a for loop to iterate through the array to generate these. And then we're just going to drop divs on there. And we'll have a 9x9 array, which with our auto columns, we should wind up with a 9x9 grid. And that's my thought. So let's see if we can get that to work. So inside the component, we're just going to have an input. And this input is going to just be, for now, we'll call it grid. And it's going to be of type number. And we're actually going to set it equal to, we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in the beginning, we're just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So then what we can do is just right here, we can go div. Do we want to do a div? No, we probably want to do ngContent here. For our first 4. And we're going to do for row of grid. And then inside of here, we're going to actually drop our divs. And up here, we also want to do, I think we can do let index. Oh, I'm doing it wrong. So we want to do index as y. And so our rows are going to be the y value starting at the top going down. And then our divs are actually going to be our next ng4. And this is going to be row, or this is going to be call of row. And we're going to do index as x. And it's not ngContent, it's ngContainer. And I don't know what it is about me, but for whatever reason, I always mess up ngContent and ngContainer. I don't know why. So here, we're just going to add a cell. And we need to import the cell into our module. So this is going to import cell module. CellComponent module. So now we've got our cell, and in our HTML, we're going to set the cell value equal to grid x comma y. Type number is not assignable to type number. Oh, yes. Grid x. No, we want grid y, grid x. So now, if we go back to Storybook, we did it wrong. So we got that. There's our grid. I did my repeat wrong. I've got it backwards. So it's the number of times to repeat and then what to repeat. So if I set that, and it can't be, has to be grid template columns. There we go. So we've got our 9x9 grid. It doesn't look good right now because we want the height and the width to match. Unfortunately, this is kind of where I'm going to have to leave us today. So Citadel RS, my thought is to basically use some math. So if I click here and I'm focused here, one of the things I want to do is add a focus. So when I focus in an input, I want to have this cell focused. But I also want to add subtle highlighting to the grid that I'm in, but also the row and the column to kind of give you a guideline as to what's going on. And so what I'm hoping to do is to use observables from RxJS that when I click in here, I'll be using some sort of math to determine, based on the cell that I'm in, what grid am I in, what row am I in, and what column am I in. And that may be entirely stupid. Who knows? Like I said, I'm muddling my way through this, but it's something I want to experiment with. And if that doesn't work, then I think your 3x3 grid and building this up of 3x3 squares is the way to go. But when I look at this, when I look at the Sudoku board, it just screams two-dimensional array to me. And that may be the wrong way to think about it. I'm going to continue doing this on Mondays and Thursdays. And then my Sunday stream is going to be focused mainly on just teaching the basics of web design and Angular itself. I want to build this together with the people who attend the stream, get feedback from everybody who shows up, and I really appreciate it. You guys have a good evening, and thank you for showing up.